Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Johnny Million is joining us this fine Saturday
Hello.
morning. I am in New York City, the aptly named, I believe it's called the city that refuses to nap, which I think has a lot to do with why it's grumpy. If it would just have a
New
snack
York
and a lay
City.
down,
Every time I hear New York City, I think of that salsa
New
commercial.
York City. Well, that is in essence part of the hilarity, I think. And I'm fairly certain we're live streaming okay. We will check in on that in just a
Oh,
moment. Johnny Million will check that for us, and all will be well.
yes, he will.
Yeah,
Johnny,
and
do the thing.
so a couple of big news things. Obviously, Donald Trump wants to change the rules on the debate, which of course he wants to do
Uh,
because he's a chicken poo kind of a person.
mhm.
And I think the other big news is of the week, and I don't know why this didn't get pounced on more. Maybe it's me, maybe it's Maybelline. Hard to say. But there was a story about how during the 2016 election, Donald John Trump received somewhere in the order of $10 million in large duffel bags full of small bills because everything with this idiot is a ransom demand.
Yeah.
And from the president of Egypt, El Sisi,
Hmm,
who gets very upset if you call him El Sisi,
mhm.
and does terrible, terrible things.
Yeah.
That said, if I may, there is a sort of an unappreciated detail. You know how I am on
Hmm.
unappreciated details,
I
Johnny
do
May. You
know how
know,
you are.
where there's like this little thing that kind of digs at me a little bit and makes me go, hmm, why is no one else bringing up this particular fact? And what would that fact be? Well, it, up until and the odd timing of this should stand out to almost anybody who's listening. By the way, hit the like, subscribe, support the show, patreon.com/HalSparks. HalSparks radio program Mega Worldwide is on every Saturday on WCPT. Um, is this one little thing about there's a conversation going on about Gaza over the last little bit that it is, and I quote, an open air prison. That it
Hmm.
is, an apartheid state. It is effectively it's escape from New York, Middle Eastern style. It is completely surrounded. Well, the argument against that concept is and has been for a very long time that Israel, which is the primary force that people are referencing when they talk about this, is not the does not have all of the borders. First of all, it doesn't have the water, but that's another thing entirely. But it only has two of the borders, the north and effectively the eastern border of it. The southern border, near Rafah, is the Egyptian border. And Egypt, oddly enough, has been left out of this conversation largely, except for the oddness of they don't want the Palestinians in the Sinai, so they're not opening their part of the border either way. And so the idea being that if it is indeed an open air prison, there are two wardens. There is the Israeli warden, and then there's Netanyahu in this analogy, and there's El Sisi in Egypt, who would be the other warden. The southern border blockade is entirely Egyptian. Never mind the fact, by the way, that the tunnels come in and out of Egypt, and that Yahweh Sinwar has come and gone several times from Gaza through Egypt and ends up in Qatar and back and the like. And this there's a lot of attention that's been drawn lately to this. I think largely because of the people that Israel or whoever is knocking off. We now know that the aerial strike that allegedly killed the Hamas leader in Tehran was
Mhm.
not an aerial strike at all, but a planted explosive, and that the Iranians are now on a big bug hunt to try and find out who blew up their terrorist. Their awful general person was killed from within the country, not by some aerial strike, which is again further complicating things. But again, the main detail in the open air prison argument that I think always gets brushed away, either actively by people with a particular grudge in this area or a particular narrative that they want to push, or just out of ignorance, is that Egypt is responsible for not only a border, but the most transparent border in for Hamas leadership, but not for the Palestinian people. Palestinian people cannot come and go through this, but Yahweh Sinwar could come and go as he pleased and use it as a tunnel. Now, there's been a lot of talk about why that would be. Is it because Hamas has El-Sisi by the short and curlies because he is afraid of the Iranian guard and that they're going to dust him off, and therefore he has cut a kind of tacit look the other way agreement with them? That this is the passive Al-Sisi, a passive bad guy in this argument. Well, it should come as no surprise in the argument of Donald Trump saying this never would have happened if I was president,
Yeah, yeah.
about
It's my favorite
almost,
one.
yeah, almost everything. Because, I mean, hey, it's a winner. You can't prove a negative, right? You can just always make it up. You
Mm.
can pretend all you want to. That in in that argument, obviously, um, if there's a fuse lit years before that leads exactly to why and when it happened, it should, in theory, draw attention to that fact and make it even more ridiculous. Al-Sisi, curiously enough, had a very awkward and difficult relationship with Hamas. It should come as no surprise because Hamas is a difficult organization and group of people to have a relationship with, that a lot of it involves threats against your life and all that up to a certain point. But at one point, he seemed to be on the team. And there have been a myriad of articles written over the last, I would say, 6 years, 7 years, about this curious turn that not he went from being a strange bedfellows kind of supporter of Hamas to an active supporter of Hamas to a conduit for Iran, considering how he came to power, which was to knock off the Iranian-backed leader of his country in a coup and then take it over. So we now have this story of Donald Trump possibly receiving $10 million directly from Egyptian intelligence right at the exact time he injected that exact amount into his campaign and then got paid back with big bags of cash later. And those big bags of cash, it seems, came from Egyptian intelligence. At the exact same time that al-Sisi was building up his bona fides with Iran, meaning that that money that Egypt came by could very well have been, pyramid tourist dollars that is part of the budget for Egypt's intelligence agency. But it could equally be Iranian funds meant to support both
Mm.
El-Sisi and Hamas under the guise of we're going to move you in as our new guy. You'll move out our old guy. He'll flee the country, come back to Iran, and you'll run things now. And we'll make it look like you're a change of guard. That it's always been a ruse. And it, that idea, that possibility, makes way more sense when you add the idiocy of Donald Trump on top of this. The fact that Donald Trump sat down with El-Sisi as soon as he got into office, recognized him, said he was a great dude, and would he do this for the straight up cash? Of course he would. But on top of that, the the general belief that Donald Trump will not only get in bed with whoever will send him money, but seemingly the stupidest and most ham-handed leaders all over the world. One need only look at Erdogan, Orban, or even El-Sisi himself, or even his tenured relationship with Netanyahu, which is always on again, off again, to notice that Donald Trump not only seems to make friends with some of the worst people in the world, but at the worst time. And again, thank God. Thank God he's making it the worst time for himself and, and not necessarily for the rest of the world and for, the United States government, is that in his quest to go down in history as the world's biggest screw up, he managed to step in it again and saddle up with the worst dictators in the world right about the time they're starting to fall apart and right about the time people are getting wise. And that news just seems to dog him everywhere he goes. Um, you're listening to the House Parks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. We'll be back right after this.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm just trying to fix my
I also got from Mrs.
yes.
Million not only this Spidey shirt, but I got
Uh,
Old Bay flavored goldfish.
uh-huh.
I highly recommend.
Old Bay. Oh.
Ah, so good.
Like cheese, the cheesy goldfish. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
I for some odd reason, I thought it was Swedish fish.
Oh, that would be bad.
That would be very bad.
Old Bay
Um,
flavored Swedish fish.
mhm.
No, no, Mrs. Million does not approve.
Thank you.
Thank you. They're so good. They're almost spicy enough to be self-limiting, but not. I can plow
I
right through them.
I see.
Google what Old Bay is, how delicious. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a seafood spice that is used on the East Coast a lot. It's delicious.
Hmm.
It's a good time. Oh,
Cindy Lou said either you like Old Bay or you hate it. It's like cilantro.
yeah, you're not far off.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Are we back?
10
No.
seconds, he said.
Oh, no. No.
Fabulous. Now I can update the name of the show and bring us into the 14th century. Now, Johnny Million, uh, do you have a favorite part of the crazy dumbest sim ever election cycle that we're in right now? Anything that you've been watching over the last little bit that has stood out and made you
Oh,
go,
my favorite part is easily the absolute self-owning with the black journalists.
yes, that I have to say, you know me, you and I share I would neither of us, I think it's to our credit, is jaded at this point
Sure.
about things. We are, I guess, simply, you know, we take some stuff in stride. Yes, there are clearly things that should be upsetting, I suppose, but after a while, it's like those Old Bay goldfish that you're eating. That's an acquired
Mhm.
taste. That
Yes.
the crazy go nuts part of this entire thing is indeed um, it's an acquired taste. We have developed over time, I think, an ability to kind of shake off um, the impact of a lot of these things. So seldom
Right.
am I shocked. And I think you go through like it's very rare that I'm like that I get in the vicinity of pearl clutching, and especially in the ridiculousness of what passes for our current political setup. It is. I don't know how you can't see most of this craziness coming. I mean, the man chose as his vice president a guy who called him America's Hitler, who has all the uh, all the personality of a wad of wet toilet paper and all the please clap energy of Jeb Bush rolled into the image of like a youth pastor whose hard drive has just been seized by the FBI.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that look. It's not a good look. In general, not a good look.
Did you hear Shapiro just take him down?
Yes. Although I will say it's not heavy lifting. It yes. Right. Which is effectively, how MAGA lives right now. How do they do it? How do you convince yourself? Yes. Right. And I have to say, um, I mean, there's obviously elements of this where there are things that should be concerning, in terms of what JD Vance says and what Trump says for their racism, sexism,
Right.
classism, you name it. But they aren't, largely because both of them are such a mess. I do think there's some solace